about, because we need to get out the way, is this idea of the Trojan trick strategy. There's also the blue ocean strategy, which we're going to look at. We're going to look at, we won't look at all of these, but we will look at the greenhouse tomato strategy quite carefully, and we'll look at strategist chess carefully as well. But let's start with the first one, which is the Trojan horse trick. I cannot tell you how many times people have said to me that they want me to help them with strategy. And what they really are looking for is they're looking for a trick, some trick that they can use in their business, which will change their business and make their opposition go away or be superseded. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the Trojan horse story. Basically, it was this. The Greeks were trying to take the city of Troy. For 10 years, they got absolutely nowhere. They surrounded the city. They couldn't get in. They were falling apart until they came up with this idea, why don't we let them think that we're all leaving? So they built this horse outside. And what they did was they filled the belly of the horse with soldiers. And couldn't be seen by the inhabitants of Troy. The inhabitants of Troy realized that the enemy had gone after 10 years of trying to get into the city unsuccessfully, but they left what looked like a trophy behind. And in order to take advantage of the fact that they were finally freed of this enemy that was surrounding them, they were going to capture this trophy from them. They brought the horse into the city. That night, under cover of dark, the ship sailed back towards Troy. The people who were hiding inside the Trojan horse went and opened the gates, and all the soldiers came in, and they occupied the city through this wonderful little trick. I cannot tell you, as I've said before, how many people think of strategy as give me some trick that'll ensure that it all works beautifully, and I'll make a huge amount of money, and I'll get out of the lull I'm in at the moment. Here's the bad news: there are no tricks left. There aren't any. All of them have been taken. In time of Troy, in time of the battle, you didn't know what was going on in the village next door. Not that you could instantly communicate with anybody around the planet. There were no newspapers, no social media, no internet, nothing. So it was very, very easy to trick other people. There are no more tricks left. Whatever trick you come up with, I'm going to show you, will not count for much. And let's look at the next one. The next of the strategies is the USP. I'm going to come up with something which is really, really unusual. Something which nobody has ever seen before. So what I'm looking for out of a strategist is to try and help me find that one thing that just is so unique. It's a unique selling proposition. I like to use this example because in my world, this has certainly been the most amazing thing I've come across in 20 or 30 years. And that was the iPad. I remember when Steve Jobs launched the iPad. The interesting thing about it, it was launched in 2010. That's when he introduced it. I remember very vividly him standing on the stage, polo neck and all, like a Buddhist monk, and talking about this amazing contraption. At the time, I couldn't work out who on earth would possibly want something like that. It wasn't a telephone. I mean, it was far too big. They only had the big ones then. And it wasn't a computer because it didn't have a keyboard. And I only knew of one human being who would buy something like that. And that was my business partner from Saudi Arabia, Yahya. And Yahya would buy any piece of technology that he could possibly get hold of. And he would certainly be one of the first to buy this. But I didn't think this would make it at all. Here's what in fact happened. But you have to agree that that was a unique selling proposition because it wasn't a phone. It wasn't a computer. We'd never seen anything like that before. It was just seriously unusual. That's got to be a unique selling proposition. But here's the reality. At the CES conference in January 2011, which was about 8 or so months later, 80 new tablets were announced to compete with the iPad. 80. So your unique selling proposition, I've come up with something that was so unique. And by the way, let's just think about this. This is not a unique idea. This is a unique object. That object had to have a factory, had to have patents, had to have a distribution network, had to have an advertising network, had to have a sales and marketing strategy. It's a massive undertaking. And your unique selling proposition, if you produce a thing that complex, is probably about 8 or 9 months. So well done. After that, your nearest competitors are going to be there all trying to eat your lunch. So anybody says to you, strategy is finding, I need to work out what is my differentiating feature. Give it a break. If Steve Jobs couldn't find a differentiating feature of something which can drop on your foot, don't think you can find one easily any other way. Let me just make this point a little clearer with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. That's the city of London, which used to be, I'm not sure anymore, it used to be the financial center of the world and incredibly important in human history. And in the city of London, if you came up with a brand new concept, a financial concept, you could work out some way in which you could sell bonds to people who have no job, income, or assets, and you could still make money out of that because you bet that you ensure that they will all succeed, and somebody else ensures that they'll all fail, and the difference between that, you can make a comma. Even if you come up with something which is actuarially brilliant like that, it'll be in the hands of your nearest competitors in 72 hours. Any idea that you have will be in the hands of your nearest competitors, if they wish to, in 72 hours. That's an idea, not a thing. So those of you thinking about your businesses as having a unique selling proposition, that is so 20th century. Don't bother with it, not worth it, move on to something else. Very often you'll hear people talk about your mission, vision, and values. I don't know if it's terribly relevant. I wouldn't spend too much time on this unless you're an NGO. The way you can measure whether a company is good or bad, do they make money, do they not make money, it's not worth spending time on mission, visions, and values. You can have the most magnificent missions, most magnificent visions. We will be the best in South Africa. Our vision is to dominate SADC first and then all of sub-Saharan Africa. Our values are we will treat our staff with love and care as if they were members of our family. We'll treat all our customers if they were our best friends, and you can still go insolvent. So having a great mission, vision, and values will not prevent will not prevent you going insolvent, and are hardly likely to add a real difference to the quality of your business. So don't waste too much time on that. They're nice to have. When you finally list your company, you can have it on the front page of your annual financial report, but otherwise I wouldn't bother too much. Not at this stage of most people's businesses. But what I would like to talk to you about is the greenhouse tomato strategy. This is really important. I think this is probably one of the most compelling strategies, and I'd like to show you how it works and what it's useful for. Essentially, a greenhouse is creating an environment in which you control all of the factors. You control the CO2, you control the oxygen, you control the nitrogen, you control the light, you control the heat. And by controlling absolutely everything, you're able to produce at scale. You can produce the most beautiful, fresh, solid tomatoes that taste good, look good, and you can do that over and over and over again. That's the greenhouse. What's that got to do with strategy? Well, here's how you develop a strategy. You get hold of a company that is very, 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 very talented. They only employ young people and older people who are superbly intelligent. What they do is they'll analyze your environment, your competition, the economy, the local economy, the international economy, international competitors. They will know every single part about how your manufacturing should really work and come up with absolutely brilliant, brilliant strategy. And that'll cost you a lot of money. But damn it, it's a strategy that covers all the bases, and it's covered by the best in the world. There's only one problem with that. Business isn't a greenhouse. Businesses are far too complex. You cannot work out all the conditions that will make any business work. Anybody who tells you that they've got a foolproof business plan is either a liar or a fool. They don't exist. Business is just far, far, far too complicated, far too complex, as I'm going to show you. So if you talk about having a business plan, I invest in businesses as well. I can tell you that when somebody shows me a clever business plan, a brilliant business plan, and they've really, really done their homework, there's only one thing I know for sure. Not that it will succeed, you'll never find out. But what I do know for sure is that they've put in a lot of effort, and that's important. So a good business plan, all it really does, it assures the person you're giving to that you've done your homework. And if they're going to invest in you, they'll invest in somebody who's done their homework. If they are smart, if they've been investors for a long time, they will tell you, okay, lovely business plan. I can see the team did a lot of good work. I can see you put in the effort. I can see you understand what you're trying to do. Now, I want you to go out there and make money and don't bother about the plan at all, because things will change. It is highly unlikely that anybody, in fact, I've never heard of one, will ever stick to their business plan and not lose money. Your business plan will evolve and will change all the time as you respond to new conditions. So this idea of treating strategy as if it was a greenhouse where you can control all the factors is wishful thinking. Strategy isn't where you are now, where you'd like to be in 5 years' time, and then you work out a plan of how you're going to get there. That was only possible in the early part of the century. Strategy today is probably, if I wanted a quick metaphor, I wouldn't choose chess. For a long time, I used to say strategy is like chess. It's extraordinarily complicated, and to make 5 moves on a chessboard involves literally millions of choices. And although you can use a computer to assist you to make those choices, strategy isn't like that. Because in chess, which is a game of strategy, I put my intelligence and my cunning against yours, but I know exactly what's on the board. I know what pieces are not on the board. I can see where there would always be a perfect move in every condition. So if you had a computer next to you and you were smart, you would be able to play chess and you have a good chance of winning. Strategy isn't like that at all. The pieces are not all in front of you. They're not a limited number of pieces. They're not a limited number of moves, and there are no rules. Strategy is a lot more like golf. Golf is an interesting game because there are so many factors in playing golf that you have to master. But golf like chess, can be played perfectly. It is possible for a human being to play a perfect stroke, at least on a computer. You work out the wind factors, you work out I know nothing about sports, so bear with me. And you can play that ball absolutely perfectly. It's entirely up to you. Strategy is not like that at all. Strategy is much more like poker and much more like tennis. When you play poker, you don't know what cards I have in my hand. If I could be bluffing when I put down all the chips I have on the table and I say, based on this hand, that's how much I believe in it. Now you don't know what my hand is, and you can't calculate it. I can't have a good hand because I'm a good player. It's all a game of chance. They shuffle the cards, they hand them out. I don't know. And a brilliant player can be beaten by a novice. I can be bluffed into believing that he's only put that money down because he's so strong. So I fold my cards. I don't have to show you what's on my cards. He doesn't have to show me either. Strategy is much more like that. And if you wanted the sporting metaphor, strategy is much more like tennis. You can play the most perfect shot, but it doesn't mean that you're going to win, because your opponent is going to play another shot. And if you've got a partner, if you're playing doubles, it's less in your hand than it was before. There are so many factors that you have to control that you simply cannot control. And I think that the best metaphor for strategy is poker. You don't know and you can't find out, and you just play as best you can, and you just hope that you're doing okay. And sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you just don't. Okay, any comments over here at this point?
No, Ian, nothing in the chat box.
Good. Okay, let's go on. Now, if strategy isn't a Trojan horse trick, it's not your unique selling proposition, it's not your mission, vision, and values, it's not a greenhouse, and it's not a game of chess. What is strategy? Because every business has to have a strategy. As I've been telling my clients, speed doesn't matter if you're going in the wrong direction. Going in the right direction is absolutely critical, and to being able to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So we need to worry quite a lot about what strategy is and how you can formulate your own strategy. What I'd like to give you now is the very, very best through the rest of this session. I'd like to give you the very, very best I know of how to formulate strategy. My figuring is if you follow the direction I'm giving you, I really believe you'll have a strategy that you can rely on. They will probably get you to be the best you possibly can. And we'll come back to the idea of best as possible in just a moment. So let's have a look at what strategy is. I've boiled down strategy to the answer to 4 questions. Let me just tell you what these questions are. Question number 1 is, what is the most serious challenge facing our organization? You have to know what that most serious challenge is. What's the elephant in the room? What's the 800-pound gorilla? By the way, gorillas don't weigh 800 pounds. Well, what's the 800-pound gorilla? You have to know that stuff, because if you don't know what your most serious challenge is, you'll be designing a strategy that doesn't take into account the things that could cripple you. Next thing you want to know is, what does the future hold for our industry? Now, in the 100 years ago, it was a little easier to see, because if you decided you're going to open up a toy store for young girls, there were only 3 toy stores in the town. And the toy stores that were in London are so far away. Don't worry, people don't go there often, and you still will probably be able to dominate the market. All you have to worry about is the 3 stores in your neighborhood where where young kids go to buy toys and parents go to buy their presents. The world is far too complicated now. And because it's so complicated and so wide and so interconnected, you need to get some sort of sense of what the future could be for your industry, and we'll talk about what you can do about that. But it's a tough question which you have to have some view on, and I'll show you how we do that. Next thing we have to look at, once we've got 1 and 2 done, we look at what strategy will enable you to be as successful as possible in the future. Now, this is important. If your strategy is correct and you've got a sense of what the future is, the future may be fabulous, may be awful. And that obviously is industry dependent. But you'll only be able to be as successful as is possible in the industry you're in. You can't be any more successful. But your challenge is to be as successful as possible. Let's just talk about the future of industries, and you'll see what I'm after. If I had to say to you, tell me, how things going? With COVID and everything like that. I mean, people out of work, places a lot of people are desperate. Even people who are doing okay are not doing brilliantly. And you say, I am having the most successful years I've ever had in my business. We are making a ton of money. We are so busy. We cannot cope with what's going on. In fact, the client said this to me. He said, I just cannot cope. What he does for a living is that he makes industrial alcohol. They've always been a successful business. They're part of the international conglomerate. They have never done as well as they're doing now. The amount of alcohol, industrial alcohol that's being consumed is phenomenal and is beyond all possible expectation. So you have to know what the future is for your industry, because some industries will be like that and some industries will be absolutely awful. Next thing is, what coordinated actions do you need to take to execute your strategy, your goals, and your plans? So let's get working on what those questions are. Here's the first one. What's the most serious challenge facing your organization? Now, it could be anything. Your most serious challenge could be, we don't know what our competitors are up to. If I only knew what they were up to, I would know what we should be doing. Are they inventing something new? I don't know. Maybe your biggest challenge is we can't raise the money we need. I know what money we need. We just can't raise the money. Our R&D is behind everybody else's. There's a shortage of talent in our field. I just can't get really good guys who can help me in this particular part of my business. The world is volatile, unpredictable, and we have no idea what's going on. It's too wild, it's too crazy. Our product is less desirable than our competitors, and that's a big problem for us. We're in the industry, we are the industry's best kept secret. We're brilliant, but nobody knows about us. Our best clients are wobbling now. They're all wobbling. Now, if you know what your biggest problem is, you can do something about it. And if you don't know what it is, you can do nothing about it. Let's just take number 2. We can't raise the money we need to expand. And we have to expand now, not later, because we're going to miss it. Here's the dirty secret that you probably will not be told often. There is absolutely, unequivocally, no shortage of money. If the world has one thing in abundance now as any other time in human history, there is more now than any time in human history, there is no shortage of money. Nothing. Do you want R1 million? Do you want 100 million rand? Do you want R1 billion? It's all available. Just ask. The only thing you have to do is have something that somebody would be prepared to pay R1 billion to get involved in. Your problem isn't that you can't raise money. Your problem is you don't have a good idea. And if you had a compelling idea, which you can explain in a compelling manner to other people, you will get whatever money you need. You might not get the first time because he's not the right person, but by the 10th, 15th, 20th time, you'll have found exactly the right person who understands what you're offering and says, hey, that excites me. R1 billion, not a problem at all. The problem is never money. The problem is the shortage of brilliant ideas well presented to people so that they get it. Okay, so much for that. So the very first thing you're going to have to worry about is what's the most serious challenge facing you? And I think that that's an important one to get your head around. By the way, none of these questions must be answered fast. Answer them very slowly. If you have partners or people who are prepared to talk to you, talk to them and ask them what they think. This is what you think. See if you can get them, especially if they're knowledgeable about the context in which you're working. None of us is as smart as all of us. So we really need to try and engage other people as much as we can. Obviously, you don't want to show your patent to everybody who might take it and sell it, but it's worthwhile talking this through with anybody who trusts you and who cares about you, with one proviso. In the Bible, where they describe Adam and Eve as being a perfect couple, they're described as an ezer keneged, which means a help against. A help against. So the perfect couple is a help against. Why that's the perfect couple is because if it's a perfect couple, you know that you're both committed to each other. You know that he really, really cares about you and wants you to succeed. which is why he says to you, you cannot go out dressed like that. You look like you're a hippie. You've got to look far more corporate. They'll tell you that the way you spoke to this person wasn't useful. They didn't get the best impression on you. They'll tell you straight. They are people who can be consultants to you at the same time as insultants. You need somebody who can be a help against you. That's what you need in your group, in your posse, to try and help you work through these things. That's question one. Let's have a look at question two. What does the future hold? What does the future hold for you? Now, the truth is that we've been trying to find the future for a long time. We've tried astrology, we've tried palm reading, we've tried going to clairvoyance, that somebody can see the future clearly, or clairaudience. We've had people read the crystal balls. The truth of the matter is that none of this seems to be very, very good at predicting the future. I don't know if you've ever seen, I haven't, if you've ever seen a banner headline, even in a cheap newspaper, where it says, clairvoyant wins the lottery. Now you ask yourself, if they're so good, why haven't they won the lottery? I asked that question to a clairvoyant once. I said to him, if you can see the future, why aren't you rich? And he told me a very profound answer. He said, it's because I can't use my God-given gifts for something as crude as making money. I said to him, don't worry about that. I don't mind at all. So tell me how I can make money. I'm okay with that. It didn't work. The fact is that it's extraordinarily difficult to try and work out what the future is, and human beings never managed to do that in any way at all. But at the same time, and if we believe that strategy is more like poker than it is like chess, we have to think about this whole thing in completely different ways. And the idea of predicting the future is probably not the best way of going about it. But I think at the same time, we need to have some sense of what the future could hold. And I'd like to give you a good example. In the past, when people have sat down in large organizations, even medium-sized organizations, they would sit around and they try and work out what is going to be their 3-year strategy. What they would do, or their 5-year strategy. By the way, most businesses don't have one longer than 5 years that I've ever come across, and the literature just seems to say that that seems to be about right. When you look at the future, you ask yourself, what can it possibly hold for us? And you're basing that on the present and extrapolating forward on what you know and how you think it's, at this moment, it's going to unfold. And then what you do is you plan for it. That was possible in very stable times. It was possible when the world was not as interconnected as it is today. It was possible when the world bore a greater resemblance to chess than it does to poker. The fact that business now is much more like poker means you have to think differently. I'm going to suggest to you a way of doing this. When we talk about what does the future hold, it's not trying to say where are we now and where do we want to get to in the future, but rather look out in the future and ask yourself some serious questions. Let me give you one example from Johnson & Johnson's ethical division, which is Janssen Pharmaceuticals. They did an exercise and they said, let us think 10 years ahead, 10 years ahead. What's going to happen in medicine in 10 years? What will be the environment that will probably be there or close to being there in 10 years' time? And they came to, then once they didn't do this in the afternoon, they did this with a lot of research, a lot of thinking, a lot of extrapolation, a lot of guessing, informed guesses, but only guesses. And they said, we guess, we think, we suppose that the future in 10 years' time of medicine will be a disease-free environment. That it'll be a disease-free environment. Yes, people break their bones and stuff, but diseases, there won't be diseases. If that was the situation, what would we do for a living? Well, there would only not be diseases because our ability to understand the human body, individual's human body, allows us to know that within the next 5 years, you have a 1 in 6 chance of developing this particular type of cancer or that particular type of ailment or illness. If I can predict what that will be very useful. So they said, in that time, there will be predictive tools, predictive diagnosis that'll tell you what you personally could get in the future. You're not sick, and you can get that. Despite the fact that we're predicting and you're not sick, we also suggest that you take this sort of medicine because this sort of medicine will preempt you ever getting that sickness. Now, the challenge there is, how do I get you to pay? How do I get you to pay for a disease you don't have, for medicines to cure a disease that you won't get? How can I do that and do it at scale and do it at a cost that'll make it very, very affordable for people? But that's the environment I'm going to be working on if my prediction for the future is correct. Then what they did was they said, okay, if that's where it's going to be in 10 years' time, what do I need to do today? What do I need to start doing today in order to be okay for the future? And why that's critical, and why that's critical is very simply this. You cannot reap what you never sowed. So if I wait, like most companies, what so many companies do, until it's all clear that this is needed, and how do I know it's clear? Because my nearest competitor is already in that market, because the startups are already fiddling around in that area. And now I say, damn, we better get started on this. You're already on the back foot. You're already years behind. You have to imagine future, what it would hold, and then work backwards and say, if that's what we need in the future, what must we do now? And I'll talk about how much of that you need to do now, but that's why you need to know what the future will hold. And it's an exercise that I urge you to take seriously, and there are methods for doing it. So there you are, predicting what the future is going to look like. At the same time, you need to focus on your core actions right now. What core actions do you need to take immediately? Because you can't stop this. You have to make money in order for you to fund the other things you want to do anyway. And then there are things which you need to start a bit. Let me tell you what I mean by start a bit. There are things that you should start today, but probably only with 10% of your time. For the rest, you focus on the core, keeping your business in beautiful condition. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Keeping your business in beautiful condition, really purring beautifully. And on the side, 10% of your time, 10% of your money, you put aside to work on what's going to happen in the future. And then there are other things which you'll keep on the agenda. So from the start a bit and keep on the agenda, those are things which you've identified because you've identified your future. And then what you're going to do with those things is you're going to action some and action the other ones a little later on in order. Underlying all of that is what you must do with the core, and those things are called your functional strategy. I want to explain to you what I mean by functional strategy. A functional strategy is a manner of operating your organization so that it'll be as profitable as possible in whatever prevails. Now, clearly, if times are tough, you can't do magnificently if your industry you're in is having a hard time. But you want to know that you are operating so that you'll be as profitable as possible in whatever prevails. Our challenge in strategy today is firstly to look at the future, as I've just spoken about, but also to look at this functional strategy. The functional strategy describes a method of operating. Now, if you were, whatever industry you're in, there's a correct way to operate and an incorrect way to operate. And there's ways of operating which are better than others, and there are ways of operating which are just a whole lot less useful. So let's start in having a look at what those methods of operating could possibly look like, and then we can go backwards. If you want to work out what a functional strategy is, I've come up with 9 questions. These questions have been slightly modified over about 14 years, but they seem to be the questions that inevitably. So if you can, I presume we're going to share these slides with you, or they'll be available for you to download. Yes, they will be. Again, a nod over there. So you'll be able to work through this. But I'd like to show you what each one of these questions are, and what you would go about doing to achieve them. But you must understand the questions, so let me just take you through them. Question number 1. What is the profile, if you're in business already, what's the profile of your most loyal current client? That's particularly important. What's the profile? Not who they are, what's the profile? So the profile may be this. My most loyal current clients are 40-year-old white males, all of whom own their own businesses and have got an engineering background. Those people seem to get me when I come to talk to them. They understand what I'm offering them. They keep coming back, and they understand me and I understand them. We need to identify who our most loyal current clients are. If we do, what that tells us is that those people are people who really trust us, want us, and are prepared to pay for our goods and services. Next question. Where should we be focusing? You might find, based on your picture of the future, or of your picture, even of your understanding of your present context, that you should be focusing somewhere else. You have been focusing on people who've got an engineering background and they're male, but there's a lot of people entering your industry, or the industry that you want to sell to, who are not white and male and engineers. Some of them are black and female and accountants. And you start saying, why aren't we focusing on them? Or maybe we can expand our horizons somewhat. We've been focusing on, we'll come to this a little later on women's clothing. Why don't we focus on other things like men's clothing in the same context and using the same style and approach? So we need to ask ourselves the question, where should we be focusing? What are we missing? Where are we leaving money on the table? Question number 3. What problem do we solve for them? Now, this is an important question, a very important question. Let me ask you this question. Let me put it like this. The problem that you solve for them is the job that what you produce actually does for them. I'm going to give you an example, which comes from a guy called Christensen, Lake Christensen, taught at Harvard and was very popular. I'm not quite sure why. Anyway, he had some students who were looking into how they could improve the offerings of a store that sold a lot of milkshakes. Now, the normal way you do the market research is that you simply go and you put a whole bunch of different flavors and you give them to kids and older people and teenagers and perhaps parents and grandparents, because they like milkshakes as much, I suppose, as anybody else. And you start trying out your different types of milkshakes across all of them, and then you see who likes them the most, and then you go and you promote that, and then you wonder why it doesn't work all that well. He suggested to students that they analyze the people who are buying and what's going on there before they do anything else, like check for flavors. What they discovered was something quite interesting. They discovered that an enormous number of people bought milkshakes first thing in the morning. Not some, not 1 or 2. A lot of people were buying milkshakes first thing in the morning. They said, we've got to find out why that's happening. So they asked them, what is the job that milkshake is doing for you first thing in the morning? Not why do you like them, but what's the job it does for you first thing in the morning? It's a good question. What is the job that it does? The answers came up. Well, we have a long commute. And if I eat bananas on my commute, you just feel full and fat. If you drink coffee on your commute, my commute is long. By the time I've got 10 minutes later, the stuff is cold. But milkshakes last a long time. So what is the job of a milkshake? Job of a milkshake is to give me a little bit of pleasure as I'm sitting on the train for 45 minutes trying to get to my place of work. That's the job of a milkshake. Now, that's not the job of all milkshakes. If you ask yourself, what is the job of a milkshake when a father a divorced father is taking his 10-year-old kid for a milkshake at 6 o'clock in the evening before he returns the child to his mother's house? What's the job of a milkshake under those conditions? It's called revenge. I'm going to fill this kid up so he won't eat dinner and he'll be hyper on sugar because I really am disappointed what she did to me in the divorce. So milkshakes can have lots of jobs that they do, and it could be revenge, or it could be an entertainment on my trip. Okay, so you need to ask yourself, whatever I'm offering, what is the job of that thing and what does it do? Next, what could we be the best in the world at? Now, if you're making milkshakes, you don't have to be the best in the world on milkshakes totally, but they could be the best in terms of your variety of flavors. It could be the best in terms of cost. It could be the best in terms of texture. It could be the best in terms of viscosity, whatever it is that makes it up. You could become the best in the world at that, but there's got to be something that you know you could, not are, that you could be the best in the world at, and you'd focus on that because that is where you're going to make some money. Above the fact you're making money out of everything else as well. If you have a team of people, it's important to ask yourself, what is the top team? What are they most passionate about? And I'll tell you why. The way the world works is this. People look to leaders for direction. We all live in the shadow of a leader. I've seen people's behavior change only because leaders' behavior changed. I've watched people in boardrooms who used to swear incessantly, and their behavior changed very, very quickly when a new chairman came in and didn't say a word. I remember, he just looked at them with this look of absolute horror. And then I never heard swearing again. So we look to the top team, we look to our managers, we look to our supervisors, we look to anybody who's above us for directions and clues as to how you're supposed to behave here in order to make it happen. Why this is important is because I worked once for an international engineering firm who are a shadow of it. They're really big internationally, but in South Africa, they went to nothing. And the reason they went to nothing was because they were run by passionate engineers. These guys loved the technology. They talked about the technology over lunch. They read up about the technology, and they were so passionate. They wanted their clients to love the technology. The problem is they didn't know how to make money. They were just too excited about technology. What the leaders were doing was exactly what the followers were doing as well. They were all passionate about the stuff. So they would tell clients what they needed passionately, not listen to what the clients wanted and say, listen, we can make money, or we're not going to make money. Okay, next thing is, what about what you do, or where about what you do, can you be most profitable? If you're in a non-profit organization, where can you add most value? Doing what will allow you to add most value? Very often we mistake what we can add most value to, or where we should add value. I recall reading about a shelter, I think it was in Chicago. And what the shelter had been doing all along was trying to ensure that they had the good food and warm and clean beds. Then they did a survey and they asked people, what do you want most from our shelter? And you'd find moms and dads and kids would come to the shelter because they had nowhere else to go. And the answer that people gave, what do you value most about the shelter, was this. What do you really want from us? And they say, we want never, ever to have to come here again. That's what we want more than anything else. They didn't want the warm food. They didn't want the clean beds. They just wanted never to have to come again. And so the shelter started moving the offering from giving warm foods and warm, yes, they did that anyway, but not that much passion, but starting to give them new skills, trying to find opportunities, to train them to do stuff, to train them how to find jobs, to do anything that would stop them ever having to come back there. We need to find out what will make us most profitable. Next thing, it's also important to know where you could lose most. Now, it doesn't matter what profession you're in, there's always something or other that if you do, you will lose a lot of money. It could be because you're losing credibility. It could be because you're debarred. You could be because your reputation is shot, or because you've cost other people a lot of money and things have gone wrong. What is it that you could do? And for a lot of organizations, whether it's service or anything else, their most precious possession is their reputation. So that every single time you do any work for a client or a customer, you want to be able to know that that client is going to can be a reference point, and that you can always refer other people to them. So you ask yourself what it is in your particular context, where can we lose most money? What can we do that will cost us the most? The eighth question is, what's our economic moat? A moat is a small river that surrounds the castle and prevents the enemy coming in and taking the castle. Well, they kind of work. The first time they come, you pull up the drawbridge, they now can't get into the castle because there is no entrance. The drawbridge covered was lifted. Now there's nowhere into the castle except swimming, and you'll probably drown. So the question then is, what's your economic moat? What will save you from destruction immediately? Now, a moat doesn't save you from destruction eventually. All the castles that you've ever seen, or many castles I've seen, were conquered. They were conquered because the first time round, the moat was up, they couldn't do anything. So they came back 5 years later with flamethrowers or something else, and they managed to conquer it. They'll get you. Your economic moat is what will keep us safe over the short period. What have we got? You might have strong financial reserves. You might have loyal clients. You might have a wide market. So if you lose some, you won't lose all. What is your economic moat? What prevents you from getting taken out or getting severely hurt in the short term? And then the last thing is, what are the drivers of your business success? Some things drive your success. And I'm going to show you what those are. And that's what I call the functional strategy, the drivers of your success. Let's talk about this. Imagine you own a woman's boutique, and you sell clothing to women between the ages of 30 and 45. The type of women you sell to are largely professional women. They're employed. They have good jobs. They want to look trendy but not edgy. They want to look professional and tidy, but not uptight. They like that same look both for work and for leisure. Looking good, looking relevant, looking smart, looking casual, all those things together. And that's what your store is dedicated towards. Now you ask yourself, if that's what I'm dedicated towards, I want that particular type of woman to see me as the first place she ever goes to when she has money to buy clothing. It doesn't matter whether she's going to a wedding, whether she's staying home, whether she's going on vacation, we're the place that she always goes to. How do I ensure that I will always be relevant? How will I ensure that I always have long-term customers? How can I ensure that I always buy well? Oops, sorry. Now, when I look at the three things I put up here are what answers this very last question over here. What are the drivers of our business success? If you look at this business and you say, well, look, we've got to have lots of promotions. We've got to have a wide range of stuff. We've got to have lots of serving staff. We've got to be in great locations. I don't think you've got the heart of it. analyzing this, because we did this for a client, analyzing the heart of a business like this, there are really only 3 things you have to bother about. If you get those 3 things right, you're absolutely guaranteed for sure going to make money. Let's just go through them again. You have to be constantly relevant to your target market. That is, from the age of 30 to the age of 45, if they wanted to buy anything, they'll first come to you because you always have relevant clothing to them, and you always look, and you always have what they want at the right prices, in the way they want it, accessible, whatever. You're always relevant. When you stop being relevant, they'll go somewhere else, but they'll go to you first because you're always relevant to them. Or what we want out of most things, more than anything else, we want relevance. Second thing, you want to have long-term customers for a lot of reasons. Long-term customers mean you have guaranteed income for a while. You know that they're not going to go away. As long as they haven't hit 45 yet, you're still going to be attractive to them. They're going to be there for you, and they're going to buy from you. How do I keep my customers for the long term? Third thing is, how do I buy well? Let's see, if you had only these 3 things, what this would look like. You're going to have to excuse me for 1 minute because my dog is making a noise over there and I have to get him out the room. It'll take 1 minute. Excuse me. Okay. Let's have a look at this, at why this would be so important for your business. First, you need to identify what are the things you have to do brilliantly. That's your first thing. If you say there are 17 things, take the 17 things and cut them down and see if you can find generic terms that cover each one of those areas. We don't go to the best restaurants. Well, in the olden days, we don't go to the best restaurants in the city. We don't do that. We certainly don't go there regularly. If you think of the best restaurant in Johannesburg, doesn't matter what cuisine you particularly like, you're highly unlikely to go there every weekend. You'll go there on a special occasion. Where do you go regularly? You go regularly to your favorite restaurant. Why is it your favorite restaurant? Because damn, it's relevant. You know, most of the time we go out as a family, and it's family style. It's always neat. I like this. I like this type of cuisine in that sort of way. I like going out as a treat, or I like going out not as a treat, but just something to do when we just don't feel like cooking. But it's relevant to us. People only buy what's relevant and only spend their money on what's relevant. If you're not relevant, you're irrelevant. So we have to remain constantly relevant. Now, to remain constantly relevant, you need to have long-term customers. Because if I don't have long-term customers, I won't know what the new customers want. It's so much easier to have long-term customers, and with long-term customers, you develop a body of knowledge that allows you to keep relevant, because you understand what relevant means to those people. So constantly relevant is based on long-term customers. Because I've got long-term customers, I can buy well. Buying well works like this. I don't have end of the season sales. They don't have end of the season sales. Everything's sold long before the end of the season. End of the season sales where you have to sell things at 50% is not buying well. You buy so well that you never ever have to have a sale. And the challenge here is to have long-term customers so that you know what they like and you can buy well. Now, because I buy well, I'm constantly relevant. I'm constantly relevant to my clients, to my customers. And because I'm constantly relevant, they're long-term customers. And because they're long-term customers, I can buy well. And because I can buy well, they're constantly relevant. This is a virtuous cycle. You've found the heart of your business when you can find a virtuous cycle. And by the way, it doesn't matter whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, a beautician, whatever it is you are, there's something like this, with its 3 or 4 factors, form your functional strategy and are absolutely the correct thing for you to do And that's all you got to focus on, because that's going to make you, that's your functional strategy, and that's going to make you relevant for now. You can see from here that this is a virtuous cycle. And in this virtuous cycle, we buy well long-term customers, and it spins around. Now, the more this turns around from long-term customers to constant relevancy, to buying well, to long-term customers and relevancy, the faster it goes and the stronger I get. So every year, I get better and better and better at doing this. The only way you will not be caught out by your competitors is because you're just so damn good at doing this stuff. That is the only thing that will ever protect you. It's finding your functional strategy and working that strategy. Anybody who comes in today will already be 5 years behind you, even if they come up with exactly the right strategy for them, the correct functional strategy. We've got to focus a huge amount of attention on this issue of functional strategy. Let's take a pause here and see if there's anybody who'd like to make a comment.
I have a question in the chat box from Andrew Goldberg. Andrew, would you like me to read it, or would you like to ask Ian?
You can read it, it's fine, I don't mind.
Okay, so Andrew said, my father at a stage owned an ice cream store, and he found that people bought more ice cream in winter and he wanted to find out why. What were the drivers of the strange phenomenon? He established via a questionnaire that there were various factors that caused this. Then he tried to replicate those that were related to his store, and those he could not control, he left alone. He was always successful in business. In my business of being a labor employment lawyer, I have very few repeat customers, as most people are only dismissed once, it seems. I've had many repeat customers, but if I move to work in companies, then I would have repeat customers. How do I pivot?
Let's just by the way, please understand that these three things, buying well, long-term customers, and constant relevance, is only the correct functional strategy for this particular business that we did this for. A woman's clothing, a boutique chain. If you were a lawyer, you might say that the most important things for me is reputation and word of mouth as one thing. I have to push as much as I can, so that when anybody does get dismissed and they call up somebody who's been dismissed before, they say, look, there's only one place to go to, and that was I forgot the man's name, and that is to go to him because his work is absolutely superb and he gets the job done and he gets it done correctly. So your reputation is important, and seeing that is well known is very important. The advertising will probably be through word of mouth rather than putting adverts in newspapers, because nobody believes that stuff anyway. But if you can get a lot of your past clients to feel that they're really to be satisfied, that will be a key part of what you do. Second, maybe, and I don't know your business well enough, we'd have to talk this through. Second part would be, are you genuinely a creative expert in your field? Anybody can read what the law is, anybody can tell them what it is, but is your stuff creative and insightful and clever? So maybe that's an area you have to worry about. Third thing may be the way you price and how you collect payment at the end of it. I'm not sure, but what I'm suggesting is that in absolutely every single business, try and find what things would make you terribly relevant now. And if you said, look, the constant repeat business is a hard thing to do, well, just know that people have made a living out of doing that. So there must be a way to do it, and you need to find out what their way is and then do it extraordinarily well. So it can become a functional strategy, and that with time, it just gets better and better and stronger, and your business gets built that way. But the key is go through those 9 questions and see if you can come up with your functional strategy, and it doesn't have to be 3 things. And as I say, this functional strategy belongs particularly to a woman's boutique. Anything else, Tracy?
No, yeah, nothing in the chat box, but
Okay.
everyone is able to unmute themselves if they have any questions right now.
Tracy, I've got a question.
Yes, Leslie.
Thank you. And it's really fascinating listening to you. Wouldn't it be better if we carry on with your example of the woman's dress shop? Wouldn't it be better that they conceived of themselves as a provider of something that made you always feel good on every occasion, rather than a dress shop for every occasion? So kind of conceptualizing it as an outcome rather than a product. And in that way, you're more resilient and adaptable, because then you can do things that always make you feel good on any occasion. And
Absolutely.
for now, maybe he's selling dresses. And if I can just finish, you know, my
Please.
son, since he was at school, was an entrepreneur. So he bought vending machines. And I always used to say to him, don't think of yourself as a vending machine manager. Think of yourself as a convenience supplier. And that way he's been able to be a convenience supplier for fast foods and adapt to what different circumstances there are. He's not a vending machine manager. Thank you.
Lovely. It's spot on. It's spot on. It's getting to the heart of, if you ever look at these questions here, when we're looking at what problem do we solve from them, number 3, that'll lead you almost invariably to what you're talking about. So when you're talking about what is it that, what do people want from us most? What problem do we solve for them? It may be that we're the convenient place where you can get gum or whatever it is you want, or we're the convenient place at which you can get that feeling that you look good, that you're appropriately dressed. Absolutely right. It's getting down to exactly what you're saying. I couldn't have said it better. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
I've never strategized. I've just been so busy making the business run on a daily basis. And I realized last year that I'm working in instead of on. So this is like all really new to me. And I think it might be my weakest link.
If you were very successful, if you've been successful up to now, I would say this would be a wonderful adjunct, which will put you into a different level of success. As I started by saying, speed doesn't matter if you're not going in the right direction. And you might find that this is a correction. When you've looked at this and you've understood if it's a lady's first dress shop and you've understood that carefully, you'll say one thing, I wasn't focusing on being constantly relevant. How do I remain constantly relevant? And then maybe by saying to your staff, lunch breaks today, I want you to walk around the mall and just walk around and see what people of our age group are wearing, what they want to look like and how they look. See what they're wearing in office blocks, find out what's going, read magazines, but do anything you can to remain constantly relevant. What sort of things do people want when they're long-term customers? Ask the staff to try and assist in trying to identify what keep them as long-term customers. I know when I walk into a store, the one thing I really do not like is being accosted by somebody before I've even decided I want to buy anything there. And I presume there are a lot of people who want to be accosted, but there are enough people like me who do not wish to be accosted. And so you want to train your staff on how they can ensure that they have long-term customers. And how do they deal with complaints? How do they deal with mistakes? How do they just see to that the person who's there wants to come back again? If they like personalized attention, how can I give them that? If they want distance attention, how do I do that? How do I read them? So by saying this is my functional strategy, you'll become better and better at doing the things that really matter and that really make money for you. And I think that is where the value of doing the functional strategy part of this exercise actually comes in. And I'd suggest go through those questions. They've been, as I say, they weren't made specially for this course. I've been using the same ones with slight variations and refinements over a long period of time. And I think they would do it. And when you have an opportunity, do that future backwards idea where you imagine what the future of the type of industry you're in could look like, and then you work your way backwards and you say, okay, if that's the case, then I have to see to that I continue on my core, but there's also some things I need to start a bit and other things I need to keep on the agenda for once those are in place. I first have to take care of this and then I'll take care of that. But if you don't start doing that now, you can't reap what you didn't sow. So you have to start right away.
Thank you for sharing your insight with us, Ian, and your knowledge, your years of knowledge.
Thank you. Anything else, or should we go on?
And nothing else, Ian, unless anyone else has a question, but in the chat box, there's nothing.
Okay. When we look at our strategies, just bring this all together. The purpose of having a strategy in the first place is that you have a very clear idea of what you want to achieve. I would urge you, when you go through this, and the only way to actually to make this work for yourself is by doing it very slowly. I've watched people who said, look, the real question is, and the 9 questions is the very last one. So why don't we just cut out the waffle, get to the last one, and every single time it's been wrong. The order that they're in is probably not that important. You can put 6 before 5. It's not terribly significant, but you have to go through all of these 9 questions. Once you've done that, you'll be in the best position to say, I have a good idea of what my functional strategy is. So this can be slowed down quite a lot because they're questions. And I would urge you, if you possibly can, don't do this on your own. If you have a business partner or somebody in your business whom you respect and who won't be intimidated by you and talk straight to you, spend some time with those people and go through these questions with them and talk it through with them. You can't spend too much time on this. You can only spend too little time. And getting this clear, whether you get it clear in a week, a month, or 6 months is not important, but getting it clear is important. The second thing is, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to start a bit now. And too many businesses don't start a bit now. And they start a bit when it's too late. Anything that you want to take, people who've been in business a long time know how many years it takes to get things right. So you need to start the things that you think will probably be right in the future. You need to start applying them now, and then you can refine them. It's highly unlikely, unless you're way off, that they'll be completely wrong. But even the exercise of trying new things now will give you more skill at trying the correct things a little later on. So you should be working on 3 things: your core, the business that pays the bills, 10% on something else, on the things that you have to start now in order to be ready for the future, and see that you've got an agenda of what has to come after that. And whatever you do, the only way to ensure that you do spend any time on what I've called the starter bit is to schedule it. People don't do things which aren't on the schedule. And the easiest way to see you on your schedule is to see that there's somebody else with you firstly as an accountability partner, that you actually do it every month or every 3 weeks, whatever you've set up, and that doesn't fall off the plate. Otherwise, these things tend to fall off the plate. And the last thing I can mention is this. All of these things require patience. It will be very nice and for us to be able to say we can do this very quickly. You can't. There's some things you can do quickly. There's some things you can't do quickly. This is one of the things you can't do quickly. You really have to spend time on all of this to ensure that it's done well. And that's all I wanted to share with you.
So I think that concludes today's webinar on strategy with Ian. Are there any questions? Because I have not seen anything come up in the chat box. Andrew Goldberg said, great advice, great talk. Thank you, Ian. I know that one participant had to leave a little bit earlier, but we will be sending the recording together with Ian's slide deck to all participants who joined us this morning. I see something has come through.